There is a little saying amongst RuneScape players: you don't ever quit, you only take breaks. Hello ladies and gentlemen, WillE here, with players worldwide looking outside the cave of World of Warcraft to see a rich variety of other MMORPGs, which among them is worth the time to try and to truly invest your time into. Today I want to cover one that has stood the test of time, has older foundations than WoW, and is still going strong, and to hopefully answer, is old school RuneScape worth playing in 2021. Old School is a snapshot of RuneScape from how it was in 2007, or was initially at least. This was done following community backlash from Jagex forcing RuneScape into RuneScape 3, which featured significant graphical overhauls as well as adding in abilities. Old School is a freemium game, though a considerable amount of the content is behind a subscription. The game can be played through the official client, Steam, mobile, or third-party clients, which we'll talk about later. There is no other microtransactions at all. And whilst Old School might look like the game from your childhood, it's an entirely different beast. Let alone within the first year, Jagex were already adding brand new content to the game. Right, to try and describe Old School RuneScape in one word, it's a bit of an anomaly among the Western MMORPG market, and despite this, it's a consistent contender for top dog and is a truly unique experience to other offerings out there. Most MMOs have a sort of structure where they'll get you into the game, they'll teach you the basics, the features, and then they'll have the in-between piece, the story, you're collecting kill quests, and eventually you'll reach the end game, the later game zones, the gearing ladder, and the game really starts to begin and the meta content takes hold. The notion of hitting maximum level in old school RuneScape is something that 99.9% of players will never do. And you don't need to be the max level either to have experienced, well, anything in the game really. Old School just doesn't work like that. There isn't even a defined end game within the game. It feels better to categorize it as low level, medium, or high level content. And unlike many MMOs, all three are extremely relevant to your character's journey, and chances are you will engage with all areas of the game. It's a game which combines many small term goals that eventually lead into huge long term ones. And this begins from the moment you start playing, not after 10 hours, or 50 hours or 100 hours of grinding and leveling. Every single stat in Old School is leveled individually through training that respective skill, up to a maximum of 99. Levels are gained, however, in a non-linear fashion. Ask any Old School player what half the XP needed for 99 is, and they will of course say 92, not 50. Getting the majority of skills to 99 is a pure in-game flex with near zero actual in-game benefits. Some skills can be leveled in the space of a few hours through highly gold intensive means, whilst others will take you hundreds of hours even with the most efficient methods possible to max out. The combat and movement in Old School are both point and click. No abilities, no holy trinity of tank heal DPS, no classes. For PvE, or PvM as they like to call it in Old School for some reason, it's as simple as this. Equip a weapon, click your target and wait to see whose health bar goes red first. Ranged, equip a ranged weapon, put on some ammo, fire away. Magic, choose your spell, have the correct runes, and yeah, you get the idea. Very simple, though with a surprising amount of depth to it through item combos, manipulating the in-game tick-based combat system, and min-maxing the uptime on combat boosting effects such as prayers. There is a noticeable difference between a new and an experienced player when it comes to combat. Certain weapons also have special attacks which do something extra like double damage or reducing the defense level of your target. The combat is more of a triangle, matching your armor and weaponry to be most effective against your target. Old School RuneScape does not bind you to one server as World of Warcraft or many other games do. You can freely swap to any server, or world as they call them, as you wish. Certain worlds are designated for group activities, ensuring that basically whatever you want to do, there will be a space where that minigame or event is happening, or is at least popular as it's going to be for that particular moment in time. Moreover, the game does not have expansions. The content grows horizontally. Over time, more small incremental updates are added. Sometimes there are new best in slot items, sometimes they're side grades or situationally bits, or bits for a lower combat bracket, or a less efficient way to train a skill that provides more gold, or vice versa, or an on-use item to keep an older tier of armor relevant. there's a lot of different ways to roll things out. Some items that are over a decade old are still the most effective things you can wear at some combat brackets. Horizontal progression does present new issues such as power creep and keeping old content and minigames relevant, but it's an interesting and different way to approach how to make your character stronger, which I do enjoy. Old School is one of, if not the most solo-friendly MMO out there. There is extremely little in the game which requires more than one person to complete. And oftentimes, very skilled players will find out ways to make content designed for a group to actually be soloable. Content accessibility is more dependent on your combat level, your gear, and the quests you have access to, as well as a degree of skill for mini-boss and bossing content. There are a wide range of quests within the game, of which there are 0 go and kill and collect quests whatsoever within an MMO. Imagine that. There are many different small story arcs within the game rather than one big overarching story. It's very easy to play and to set yourself goals within the game to reach. One point of interest can really lead to another, and it's not a game you're ever going to run out of anything to do, well, ever, to be honest. Group content wise, it's more about what you want to group for more so than actually having to group for something. There are high level bosses where you can bring as many people as you want. Often there are events where 50 or so people will go in and all pile on the boss, and the person that does the most damage gets the item drop. There are 2 raids in the game which are 5-man content that offer a challenge as a real piece of PvM endgame, with a 3rd scalable raid on the way, as well as a number of different solo instance challenge content. There is a PvP scene in old school RuneScape, though it tends to be overlooked by the developer, primarily, in my opinion anyway, due to the polling system, as it's more of a niche activity, consequently feels as though it's worth less development time, and PvP updates tend to do worse on polls and have less engagement as a result. The PvP is full loot, with the ability to save a number of items if you don't initiate combat, and frankly has a very high learning curve. There is something akin to a practice mode called Last Man Standing, where all players are geared equally at the start and then upgrade their items as they gain kills. But the style of PvP found within this mode again is very niche because you're tribriding, which is using all 3 combat styles at once, which for a new player would be extremely overwhelming and again very skill intensive. Also, the PvP scene has a knack for being, well, how can I put this? Just a little bit toxic. Full loot has a thing for attracting bigger egos, and old school is not exactly short on them. One of the issues many players take with old school RuneScape is how the game actually looks, and yeah, it's old school I suppose, but fortunately there is now a HD version of old school RuneScape. Jagex actually tried to cancel this project 2 days prior to it going live, and honestly it is one of the most impressive scenes of internet backlash I have seen in a long time, which got them to reverse their decision. And perhaps most amazingly, the HD version was done by one guy over 2 years. This is 117scapes HD, which is a plugin for the RuneLite client. The majority of the player base does not actually play on the official client for old school RuneScape. They use RuneLite, which is a third-party open source client, featuring a massive amount of player-driven updates and plugins to add to the game and generally enhance various gameplay aspects, add convenience, and now make it look a lot better. If it's something you can think of, it's probably existed or tried to have existed on RuneLite in some capacity. At times, as expected, it's been a bit too OP, such as automating actions which should take multiple clicks, like using bones on an altar instantly for prayer training, or giving on-screen instructions about combat actions in future for PvMing at demonic gorillas, at which point Jagex have intervened several times throughout the existence of RuneLite, but I can honestly recommend it entirely if you are ever considering giving the game a go. It only works on PC, however, though the standard mobile UI is more than competent enough by itself, I would say. The game client is also a resizable baseline, as not everybody probably wants to play on the actual true to old school client, which is this big. Aside from the main game playing as normal, there are a number of official divergent ways to go about it. These choices are either made when you create your character or are seasonal servers. The most popular amongst them is Iron Man mode, which is a version of the game where you cannot trade with other players. This entirely changes how the game works, as the best way to trade many things often ends up being do a boss that gives you a lots of gold, and then go to buy materials off the Grand Exchange and then trade it. On an Iron Man, you have to source everything for yourself: food, weapons, bars, ores, wood. It's more of a grind, but it offers its own unique rewards from being entirely self-sufficient. There is also Ultimate Iron Man, which has the same restrictions as above, but you also cannot use a bank. This is massively more grindy and time consuming. Hats off to anybody that can play this. And then Hardcore Iron Man, where your character has 1 life, and if you die at any point ever, you will be downgraded to a regular Iron Man. This is a considerable challenge to see how long you can play the game before the servers crash or your internet disconnects. Seasonal content includes Deadman mode, the latest season has just finished, where near the entire world is PvP flagged and has additional restrictions. There is also a prize pool and a tournament at the end of it as to see who will be the last player left alive. There is also leagues where players are locked to certain zones in the game and given large experience buffs, and then a challenge to complete a certain number of objectives within said zone. There are also relics to modify the way you play the game considerably, and this one is more of a PvM seasonal mode. Perhaps these modes are more for the experienced players, but if you played for a long time and are looking for something different, then it may be worth keeping your eye out for the next seasonal server. Overall, there is a reason why RuneScape has been around so long. If you want a game where you can invest time, for your time to be exactly as relevant as it was when the point when you left off, old school RuneScape is that game. Your gear won't be absolute garbage, it will be as good as it was then, the same with your total levels and the quests you've completed. In RuneScape, there's no real concept of it being a casual friendly game or a hardcore game. There's no time gating, and it's just sort of whatever you make of it. I mean, what more could you ask for from an MMO? Old school RuneScape offers an absolutely unbelievable amount of content. If you've been looking for something to give a go this year, well, I can only really warn you about old school because it might just do its job a bit too well. That's it though. If you enjoyed the video, do consider dropping a like and a sub. That would help me out immensely. Let me know your thoughts, whether you're an older RuneScape player or somebody who's considering giving it a go. As always guys, thank you so much for watching and listening in. I'll see you all in the next one very soon.